The Ancestors. Hello, friend. After Gandalf's encounter with Durin's Bane, the Balrog of Moria, a fight that lasted 10 days, Gandalf the Grey died. Much to the relief of the people of Middle-earth, Eru Ilúvatar brought him back to life as Gandalf the White, an act that would lead to the complete destruction of Sauron and his machinations. Had this story been set in Africa, Gandalf would not have needed to come back to life. Instead, he would have ascended to the world of the ancestors and continued in his role as guide to the Fellowship of the Ring. While Gandalf returning as a wizard of the White Order was consequential in the Lord of the Rings movies, in an African setting, he would have been just as helpful as an ancestor rather than as a resurrected wizard. You see, in ancient Africa, the belief that life continued after death was widespread. Everyone desired the ascension to ancestor status after physical death. In major West African communities such as the Yoruba in Nigeria, the Ga and Ewe in Ghana, and the Fon in Benin, those who had ascended to the status of ancestor were given honorific titles. Ancestors dwell in a plane that exists in parallel to the world of the living. But there is no hard membrane separating the world of the ancestors from the world of the living. Instead, these two worlds are intertwined. What does this mean? It means that the ancestors remain active in the daily affairs of the living. A clear demonstration of this is that in some communities, people poured libations and offered food to their ancestors every day. Ancestors not only existed in their spiritual plane, but also lived in sacred trees, caves, and even within certain animals in the physical world. So, people would visit such sacred places to commune with or venerate the ancestors. Most African communities consider dying and moving on to ancestor status to be the ideal. This is because becoming an ancestor meant that you had lived a moral life of service to the community. It meant that parents would encourage their children to be like you or name their children after you because of your deeds. Some African communities believe that after death, you immediately ascended to the ancestor plane, while in others you had to fulfill certain conditions before ascending. Apart from the manner in which a person died and how their burial rites were performed, most West African communities believed that the deceased person must also cross a river between the world of the living and the world of the ancestors. Anyone who does not succeed in crossing the river returns to the world of the living as a restless, wandering ghost. These ghosts are often hostile to the living and are greatly feared. So, how do you avoid this fate? It is all in the hands of the living. You see, to transit successfully to the plane of the ancestors, the living had to perform the right rituals immediately after a person's physical death. Firstly, your funeral rites must have been done according to traditional law. For instance, in some communities, all the female kin had to shave their heads. In others, people took ritual baths or swore themselves to silence after a death. If the deceased was a young person, it was assumed that the death may not have been natural. So, a medicine man or shaman would be called to investigate the cause of the death. Unnatural deaths had to be investigated and their causes resolved to ensure that the spirit of the dead person ascended to the ancestor plane. Funerals had to be done right for descendants not to suffer the wrath of a scorned ancestor. But to be an ancestor, you also had to have descendants, who could be your children or people who thought of you as a guardian. That is why in most African societies, having descendants was a serious responsibility for the continuation of the community and also for the sake of the afterlife. To understand the significance of ancestors in traditional African cosmology, you need to understand their position on the pyramid of gods and spirits. At the very top of the pyramid of African cosmology is God, who is the supreme being above all other entities in the spiritual and physical realm. In some African traditions, God as a supreme being is neutral, unlike the good and evil spirits that are also included in the pyramid. Some African societies believe that the supreme being is transcendent, meaning that God does not participate directly in the affairs of humanity. Instead, people revere and worship God as the ultimate source of life and order. Below the supreme being on the pyramid are the deities who are often associated with natural phenomena or specific aspects of life. For example, river deities, storm deities, rock deities, and so on are associated with the natural phenomena they are named after. Some deities represent aspects like fertility, health, protection, and so on. After the deities, you have the spirits. These could be malevolent or benevolent spirits. In some African traditions, spirits occupy the same position as the deities, while in others, they appear below the deities in the pyramid. Right below the spirits are the ancestors, who act as guides, protectors, intermediaries between the spirit world and humanity, and custodians of morality. Rituals like pouring of libation or food offerings are meant to venerate, not worship, the ancestors. Since some of the veneration rituals are also done in the worship of the gods, some Christian anthropologists argue that veneration is actually worship. But wouldn't that mean that the veneration of saints in Christian tradition is also worship of the saints? But that is a video for another day. Among some African ethnic groups, such as the Yoruba, it is possible for great ancestors to be elevated to the rank of the gods. As a matter of fact, the entities that form the Yoruba pantheon of gods were once human beings who became great ancestors and were eventually elevated to the status of gods. A clear demonstration of this is that the Mende people of Sierra Leone actually refer to God as the great ancestor. Now that you understand the position of ancestors on the pyramid of cosmology, you can create a story with a unique and sensational plot. Instead of a villain like Sauron, how about you create a malevolent spirit that your protagonists have to confront? Your hero can consult an elder who will then direct the hero to a shaman to help receive guidance from the ancestors. Guidance can come in the form of dreams or during a potion-induced trance. If the dreams are riddles, your hero can go back to the shaman to interpret the hidden meaning. There are countless possibilities in terms of story plots that ancestors bring to the table for your African fantasy. So, we have learned that the ancestors in African societies are not ghosts or gods, but family members who have died and crossed over into the spiritual world of ancestors. They are not gods, so they are not supposed to be worshipped. Instead, they are intermediaries between the living and the spiritual world. Rituals are performed in remembrance and in honor of the ancestors. While different African societies view ancestors in their own unique way, what I have presented in this video is generally accepted all over the continent. I hope you got to learn something new. Please leave a like and subscribe because it helps with the YouTube algorithm. Goodbye and good luck.